Hello, 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 and welcome to Pitch Zone. Today is a very, very special day for us because we are looking at how you can enter your zone of genius more often and in a way that your creativity and productivity is simply going through the roof. And the conversation we are going to have is together with Nathan Gold. He's joining us from San Francisco.
Hello.
Nathan, hello, hello, hello.
Hi. Good morning. Good afternoon.
I'm looking really, really forward to this discussion here, Nathan. The zone of genius. I simply
Mm,
love it. Some know it as a flow state or getting into your zone. When is
hmm
the last time you were in the zone, Nathan?
Funny you should ask that. I was in the zone just yesterday, actually, at the Plug and
Mm-hmm.
Play Tech Center with
Mm-hmm.
21 people that are coming into a new incubator for the underserved, BIPOC, they call it. And it was one of those magical experiences where all of the
Mm-hmm.
people in the room were very early stage and they sounded like they were seed or Series A stage.
Okay.
Yes, it was a fun. I mean, I was like blown away.
Wow. Wow. So how does this show up in you when you are in that zone of genius, when you're in that flow state? How does this
Mm.
show up for you? How do you feel it?
I feel it as though the stars are aligned when I offer coaching questions or feedback to people. And
Mm-hmm.
literally all 12 one-on-one meetings that I had, there were 10-minute meetings. People came in and I said, "What can I help you with today?" And they told me what they needed help with today. And in less than 10 minutes, it just felt like it was flowing with every single one of those people. They got what they needed and then some. So it was literally yesterday for about 2.5 hours.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I love it. And who is loving it more than me is most likely Tracy, who is waiting in the green room to join us for this conversation. So let's bring in Tracy Clark. Tracy, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for Claudio and Nathan for inviting me. And I'm
Sure.
very excited by this exciting topic. I think it can bring lots of insights. And as Nathan said, when you're in that zone, it's such a powerful feeling, isn't it? And time just flies, and the ideas just pop into your head. So
Mm.
yeah,
It
let's see how we
definitely
can
is.
get into that zone more and more.
Yeah, yeah. And it's our goal now in the next 45 minutes to really help our audience to understand not only what this state is, but how to get into it more frequently and easier, right? But before we start, let's quickly say hello to our viewers on YouTube. And today I'm going to do it like this because we have a couple of people here. We have Anthony from San Francisco. Anthony, real pleasure seeing you. We have Massimo from Thailand. All right, Massimo. Nadia, real pleasure seeing you here. Yash, Sammy, and Nadia here with your comment. When you reach that flow state, it's amazing. And absolutely, it is. So
Mm.
let's get the ball rolling here. Tracy, your focus as and we also have someone just joining us here, the facilitator. This is Saeed from Germany. So we have people from Thailand, from Germany, from the States.
hmm
Absolutely wonderful group here. So you are an executive coach, and I got to know you through one of your clients, and I saw the progress that he made since he worked together with you. And I was just intrigued. I was like, introduce me to this person because she seems to know what she is talking about. How did you get to focus on what you're doing now?
Well, I worked, my brother and I had our own company for 20 odd years, and we were in the oil and gas events industry, and we really scaled it. So there I had the real sort of first-hand experience of building a business and working with teams so that we could extract and expand their potential, and so that we could create real impact with our audience, which was oil and gas companies, the national oil companies, the international oil companies, governments, all around the world. And as we came up to the sale of our company, we brought in a consultant. And what I realized was through him that although we'd been really good at the sort of the strategy side, there was one part of our business more around the leadership and the mindset that we hadn't been covering as much as we could have done. And it was the interactions with him that just really sparked my interest and got me to realize, my goodness, if we're achieving this, and if we started to implement more and more of this leadership and this mindset approach, what might we be capable of? And so this sent me on a journey of discovery, Claudio, which has been absolutely magical, into really understanding how to unlock people's potential. And then from there, I've gradually really focused in on this zone of genius to really see that everyone has their own unique blend of genius. And often they need support and help to really uncover, well, what are these different ingredients that's going to make my signature dish? And what I found especially is that there are areas such as self-concept and identity that I certainly hadn't understood. And when I introduce them to my clients, like the gentleman you're talking about, Claudio, that's where the magic happens. So that's where it's come from. And now, having had years and years of working, especially with founders, I'm always honing and fine tuning my techniques so that they get to their zone of genius as quickly as possible.
I love it. And just for our audience to understand, because you mentioned the key, right? The key is that we all experience this differently somehow.
Completely.
How do you help your clients that may think, hey, I don't have a zone of genius, or if I have it, it just comes up randomly. How do you work with them to first make them aware that they actually have a lot of genius inside? And then how do you unlock it? How do you awaken that in them?
And I think it's so magical, especially when people come and they're really not sure what that zone is. So we go through a process. If I can just share the slides, Claudio,
Hmm.
is that possible? Yes. So I take them through a journey. And basically, let me start by saying most people have the conception that your zone of genius is just about leveraging your strengths. And what we're going to see here is that's one portion, but actually there's so much more. So we start on this journey, and it's like going down a funnel, and it's a funnel of discovery and a really exciting journey. So I get them to start by reflecting on when have they been at their best? And this isn't only just looking at what they are, what they're doing. I'll take you to the next slide. It's not just
Hmm.
about only what they're doing. It's about how are they thinking and how are they showing up when they're at their best. Okay. So we're looking at these three areas. Most people just look at the actions, then maybe the maybe the mindset, but very few focus on the identity. So if we go back, I'm getting them to reflect and just to go into those times when they felt like they were having an impact, that they were moving the needle on their business. And they start to explore, and we go deeper and deeper. And then what I find is that most people have quite a lot of blind spots. They're just not aware of what they're not aware of.
Hmm.
And so we go on this exciting journey of discovery. And I ask them to go and talk to some of the people that they've worked with and interacted with and ask them, When have I been at my best? What am I doing? How am I showing up? Where am I? When is this? When does that magic happen? And that can be one of those most magical times when they're then reading back to me the feedback that they've been given. And I can just see their surprise on their face. So we're capturing more and more information. And in this journey of discovery, I do a big deep dive with them. I take them through, and this is what I did with the gentleman that you and I are talking about. We went into the Enneagram, which is the most fantastic leadership discovery tool, which really helps you understand your motivations and what's going on underneath the surface. And we're looking at what are some of the blind spots that I might not be aware at? What are some of the strengths that actually I could amplify more? So we're looking at that the whole time. And I find that that is transformational, because often in the blind spots, what can happen is they can realize that certain things are tripping them up. For example, I have a few founders who are, they're people that are going places and they want to achieve, they want to challenge the status quo. And so they like to be in control. And sometimes they don't realize that they've got this wonderful team with them, but they're shutting them down. That actually they don't realize that their style can be really quite intimidating. So we're looking constantly at what are the elements that are going to amplify their zone of genius, but also what are those stumbling blocks that are taking them out of that zone of genius. And often they're surprised, but by making that tweak, then they go, oh my goodness, now that I know that, I can really get more and more out of my team, which allows them to flow. It allows them to delegate and then be able to focus on their zone, which, as I said, is increasingly expanding. And then as we're going deeper into that funnel, and so they're starting to really see what are these things that they're doing. Then there are some important other elements. We're really looking at, of those elements, what are the ones that really energize them? Because sometimes we can be good at things, but do they energize them, or have we just become good at them? So what we want to do is we want to keep the ones that are energizing and look at delegate the ones that we're not so energized by. And then we're going down the funnel more. Out of all of these areas, which are the ones that are in alignment with my values and my vision and the purpose that I have? And alignment into values, Claudio, is so, so important. And I've seen that can be where the real magic happens. Certainly happened with a gentleman that you and I know. And just the other day, I was talking to another client of mine saying, are you really in alignment with your values? And he started to see that he wasn't. And the more we zoned in and examined, well, what were his values? And what was he doing when he was living those values to the full? That's when he started to really, really tune into, wow, I'm really challenging the status quo. I'm really challenging the way people are using all the objects in their house, for example, in this case. So it's a question of really going down this funnel and looking increasingly at the 20% that is where you're adding the magic. And then with all of that, you're going, okay, so now of all of these areas, which are the ones that I'm doing? How am I showing up, and who am I being when I'm moving the needle on the business and when I'm showing up as that fantastic leader? So that is the process. And I prod and I poke and I get them to think and uncover their insights, and it's fun.
All right. This, I love how you describe it. I'm a huge fan of demos instead of words, right? As a matter of fact, Nathan and I, we wrote a book 15 years ago called Giving Memorable Product Demos. And of course, this is not really a product demo, but how long does it usually take you, Tracy, to get at least, to peel away a couple of the layers. How long does this usually take you?
It depends on the client. I mean, when I'm
Hmm.
when I'm talking to people, I'm looking for people that are very open-minded and very open to growth and mastery. So when I'm looking to people who are going to be curious and be
All
a bit
right.
vulnerable, because sometimes we're looking at some blind spots that, after all, can be a little bit uncomfortable. When I have those ingredients, we can get to this zone probably in 2 or 3 sessions, and
All
then what
right.
we need to implement.
All right.
Uh,
So
make
here's an experiment that I would like to propose. We have
I'm up for
Nathan
it.
here and we have Tracy here, right? How would you go about within the next few minutes to at least get to, Nathan to understand, hey, oh, wow, I do have a zone of genius, and get him closer to it. Okay. So, what I would like you to do is a very, very brief demo. How would you work with a client? Imagine Nathan is a client of yours. How do you proceed?
I love this. And I think, Nathan, we had maybe a little bit of a glimpse of potentially into your zone of genius as Claudio and you were talking at the beginning. So
Mm.
talk to me about the time when you feel like time flows away, any experience where time flows away, ideas come to you, problems dissolve and solutions just appear, and you feel that alive stillness inside you. What are you doing and how are you showing up?
What am I doing and how am I showing up? What am I doing? Interesting question. Well, first thing I'm doing is listening very carefully to everything I'm hearing from my client. It's usually a client situation where I experience this zone of genius after 15 years of working with people. And when I'm listening, I'm trying to find ways that I can help people on the spot. I mean, yes, I have clients that go over weeks and months, but generally speaking, I want to prove to people that I can help them right on the spot. And that's how
Yeah.
I prove my value to people up front. So I'm listening carefully. I find that one thing, and then I got it. It's like that zone where I'm listening, I got it, and then I just wait for them to finish, and then I offer them that feedback. And it's like the stars lining up, and then all of a sudden it's crystal clear in my mind. It's almost a picture in my mind that's telling me how to help this person.
And is that something you've always been good at, Nathan, or is that something that you've lent into and you've developed the art of?
It's been developed. I spent 50 years in my career, as Claudio mentioned, doing demos and working with salespeople, doing the part of the sale that I didn't that I loved doing, which was not the cold calling, not the close, but everything in between. And that's where I developed that skill of being able to figure out what does the audience need in order to make a buying decision for the product that I was representing. So
So I'm
it go ahead.
no, you carry on.
I was just going to say, so it really goes back to that all of those years. And then as I started to be an independent consultant working with people literally every day, it took me 6 months, maybe even a year to get those soft skills in my head where I could identify those areas that I could help people on the spot. And then once I did, then it just became easier and easier and easier because it's quite a bit of repetition when you're working with startups and executives. They all pretty much have the same kind of challenges.
Mm.
Did I
So
answer your question?
you did. And I'm sensing
Okay.
that in there, we've got a power of the question in there, the ability to listen, and then the
Yes.
ability to really zoom in and zone in on what the issue is for your client on the other side. How does that sound? Does that feel like that's what you're doing?
Exactly describes what I'm doing. As an example, just yesterday, I had this really early stage startupper came to me, sat down, he said, Nathan, you probably don't recognize me. I said, yeah, I don't recognize you. He says, I have millions of followers. I'm a professional rapper.
Oh,
on
wow.
the side. I've been doing it for my whole life since I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I said, wow, that's so cool. He said, yeah, and my startup is this, is this. And he says, how would you pitch my startup? I said, I would wrap it. And he says, what? I never expected you to say that. Why not? Wrap your pitch, at least the opening. Be different, be unique, be compelling up on stage. And then I gave him an example of a Canadian that I helped last week who didn't rap, but he used a poem, kind of the way Shane Kozian did on the TED stage, where he talked for 18 minutes and it was a poem.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I'm loving in there your desire to really bring out their uniqueness.
That's
And
right.
I'm just
That's
curious, Nathan, what are your values? What's important to you?
me. To me, what's value?
You. Yeah.
To me, honesty, integrity. Uh, Honesty and integrity, I guess, are the two most important values that I look for in people, and being coachable. I'm a
Mm.
coachable person. I'm always open to learning. And that's one thing I love is about myself. If I have to say one thing is I generally keep myself open to being a lifelong learner. And that's
And
what
that
happens when I go to networking events. I go to a networking event. I don't talk much at all. I just ask questions, because if I'm talking, I'm not learning. So my goal is to learn something from every single person I interact with. And you can learn stuff you've never known, or you can learn stuff, remind yourself of things I already do know. And that's how I feel like networking has worked in my favor. Is I just go in with the curiosity. What can I learn from this person in 2 or 3 minutes? Maybe it's just the best Indian restaurant within 2 miles of where we're standing, but I try to learn something from everybody.
fantastic. And let's talk about the impact that you have when you have this gentleman on yesterday that was the rapper. What's the impact that you have when you're in your zone of genius, when you're asking those questions?
Well, that's really easy, Tracy. I see the lights in the eyes of my client light up. The eyes just, oh, why didn't I think of that? I never thought. You should have seen this guy come out of his chair. He almost wanted to stand up and start doing it. So when I can help people, I guess it's helping people find their zone of genius, in your terms, help to
Mm.
find their zone of comfort. I think it's more about the comfort, because in the startup world, there's mentors and coaches and accelerators all trying to get people to fit in their box. Problem,
Yeah.
solution, market, blah, 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 blah. And I come along and say, what? You don't have to do that. Throw it all away. Tell your story. And by telling
Mm.
your story, you get to be more honest, authentic, and real, instead of bullshitting your way through a pitch where you say, oh, my problem is this, blah, 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 blah. It's like somebody wrote a deck 25, 30 years ago. It was 13 slides, and everybody's still using it today. Not everybody, not my clients.
And I think, Nathan, you've really hit something on the dot there. It's all about uniqueness, I think, in what you do and what I do as well. The
Mhm,
zone of genius is about really bringing out your authentic self. To me, there's
mhm,
nothing that frustrates me more than when I hear, especially women come to me as founders and they go, I need to be this type of leader. I'm like, what? Why? Why on
mhm,
earth do you be like that? It's about finding that zone of genius, that uniqueness in you that gets you to be magnetic. And I mean magnetic in the two senses of the word. Magnetic as in attracts the right people and the right talent and the right investors and the right clients, but also importantly, it repels. So because you are so unique and authentic, people are going to love you or they're going to hate you. And we want you to be magnetic in the way that repels as well, because that's
mhm,
absolutely essential. I don't want to work with people who just want to stay in a box. I want to work with people who are challenging the status quo, who want to make the impact. And I'm
mhm,
sensing, Nathan, that that's what you want. You're looking to extract that uniqueness as well, so that when they're pitching,
mhm.
they close their deals.
Yes, indeed. You hit it right on the head there. And Tracy, for you, I have a question for you, if you don't mind me flipping this back
Yes,
on you. But
yes, go
we
for it.
are constantly being asked by women how
Mhm.
to be better this, better that, better this. And as an example, yesterday I had a early stage startup woman sit down with me for those 10 minutes. And she said, I have a really hard time establishing credibility with people and I don't know what to do. Okay, well, tell me a little bit about you. She says, well, I've been in the Olympics twice. I'm a content creator and I was approached by Harvard to have my content turned into a curriculum that they are now using me to teach. I have a PhD, blah, 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 blah. It's like, what? Why aren't you mentioning any of that in the beginning of your pitch? Well, I feel like I'm bragging. So could you please help, especially women, be more, give them a strategy that they can open themselves up to establishing their own credibility without being so reserved sometimes or unwilling to mention something like, in 2015 June, when I walked into my first class for a PhD, I was like, wow, what do you mean? You have a PhD, you are at Harvard, you do this, and you're having trouble establishing credibility? What do you tell people?
And that's a brilliant case study there. So I've got a client that I'm working with. It's the same. I mean, one success after another, and I see it.
Mm.
And what I notice with her is that she doesn't own it. She doesn't actually connect to those successes. So actually just recently, I got her to literally write them all down. What have you done? What are you doing? And connecting to the impact that she was having at these moments of brilliance that she was having. And even as she was talking to me, I could see that she hadn't really acknowledged and accepted this excellence that she had. So the first part is own it, acknowledge it, and celebrate it. Okay. Another big thing, Nathan, that came up for me as you were talking with that lady that you were just mentioning was that we need to shift identities. So she's had different versions of herself from the Olympic, was it swimmer, from the Olympian, through to having a PhD and now to being a content writer. And I'm suspecting that what's happening now is her identity might be in the Olympic swimmer, or maybe not, or maybe even not there. But she needs to now think about who is the version of herself who is having the impact that she wants to have. So we need to gain clarity on what it is she wants to do and why she wants to do it. We want to connect energy. We want her, more importantly, to connect energetically to that. And then think, who am I being? Who is the version of me that has achieved that? And you start to go there. And Claudio, the gentleman you and I were talking about, that is the critical work we were doing with him, shifting the identity from from Olympian, let's call her Jane, from J 1.0 to Jane 2.0 to Jane 3.0. But often they're stuck in an old identity. And what we need to do is we need to get them to own what they've achieved. Then we need to get them to understand some of the limiting beliefs, especially in the case of women, about, well, women don't have a voice, or, a man's going to get more attention than I'm going to get. And I've said to quite a few women, no, own it. Own who you are. And another lady I was coaching came from an ethnic minority as well, and a woman and a founder. She was like, who's going to listen to me, Tracy? And I'm like, seriously? And we got a high achiever in every single domain. Well, tell me why they're not going to listen to you. And we got her to see that what she thought was holding her back was actually one of her superpowers. And her business was transformed through that, because she was seeing herself as, wow, actually, I can own it. And I can step into that power. And then, as I say, then it's really getting clarity on that version of yourself. And one example that I like to go to is, if you take Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's a great example of someone who has embraced different identities. Now, I don't know whether you've watched his Netflix documentary. And he talks a lot about visualization, about going from being Mr. Universe to then being the actor or the Hollywood star, and then to becoming governor. And he talks a lot about the visualization and the intentionality. But what he doesn't actually name, but what he was doing, he was stepping into that future version of himself. And that's where the power is. And that's one of the reasons he really unlocked that level of greatness. So tying back, Nathan, to what you said, it's working at those different levels. Acknowledge, reflect. What are those things that I've achieved? Let's peel back the beliefs. Let's peel back the fear. What's the fear you have? Is there a fear of judgment? Wow, what might someone think of my content? Because I'm just an Olympian. Huge. And then we start to look at, who is this version of myself? And I find that most people don't even go there or don't even understand it. But that's where the power is.
Wow.
And you mentioned limiting beliefs, and I believe that this is really what holds back most people. Even if they have a grasp of identity, it's their beliefs, their limiting beliefs about how the world works and how they fit into the world, that is a huge break in there, or slowing them down. Before we continue that, though, I would like to turn to the comments and some of the questions that we are getting from our audience on YouTube here. Let me do it this way here again. Gunvor, wonderful. Yes, that's usually what we get, that pitch zone. Yash, actions begin with the mindset. Yes, absolutely. And then Massimo has a question here. Are there any specific foods that you believe that have an impact in finding your zone? For example, caffeine, is it good or bad? With sugar or without sugar? What is your take on that, Tracy?
I think, like anything, this is very unique to the person. What I do believe is that well-being and looking after yourself is absolutely key. So things like sleep, rest, recovery, going to a place of stillness where you're quietening your mind, that's a really important access point. And going back to nutrition there, I think for me, a balanced, healthy diet without a lot of sugar, although I do love some dark chocolate, I think that's really important. I do find that sometimes actually getting people to have an odd glass of wine where they're just relaxing and really going into and exploring what that future version of themselves might be. And I love to tell people to go to their 90th birthday and to think about having all their family around them and their friends. And maybe if they have children, having a grandchild sitting on their knee, and they're talking to them about their life and what they've achieved and the impact they've had. And I think getting people into their imagination, sometimes a bit of alcohol can just loosen those limiting beliefs and the fears. I find that can be important. So I don't personally find caffeine works for me, but each to their own. As I say, for me, I think the biggest thing I've discovered is that coming out of my mind, out of that racing inner voice that's going, oh, Tracy, what about this and what about that, to the place of stillness, to the place where my intuition is kicking in. And I'm just in a real place of genius the most. And I think that is what I would recommend to people. And really, I talk about self-inquiry and really thinking about the nature of who you are. You know, we're going back to beliefs, Claudia, where we're brought up to believe we're a mind, we're a body, we're this human being. But are we just that? Or actually, is there another part of us? So I get people to reflect on, well, who am I? What's the nature of who I am? And what you tend to find in that reflective part is that you start to investigate and you can't answer the question. You go to a place of stillness, a place of absolute inner peace where what you do know is that I am
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm.
and I am aware. And you start to realize that you are the blank canvas bringing in this whole experience, this whole life into being.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we go there and we access that point of stillness, that's where we can get into the zone of genius.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to the gentleman's question, rather than food and drink, my view is go to that place of stillness. Go to before the beliefs, before the mind, before
Mm-hmm.
what's showing up. And it's magical. And I think
Indeed.
that's where the magic comes up, and you're coming out of the intellect and you're
Mm-hmm.
making it experiential, which goes back to your word of creating experiences.
Absolutely. All right. So we only have about less than 10 minutes left, and we have a lot of comments and questions here. So let's just go through them fairly quickly. Nadia, she asks whether you can comment on gut feeling and
Oh
how
yeah.
it relates to finding your zone. Now, there are a lot of more questions here if you are having a
Okay,
look here, Tracy. So let's see whether we can
let's go
answer
into gut
each one
feel.
very, very quickly.
Gut feeling I absolutely love. And when you go to that place of stillness, or you're going out into nature, for example, and you're letting your mind go, that's where that gut feel, that's where that intuition comes in. And I think as founders, we tend to be very logical, but actually the magic is in that gut feel. And I think it's something that you need to tune into more and more. And I suspect that a lot of people's zone of genius has a gut feel in it, but it's something that they haven't acknowledged. So I would say, yes, time and time again, go to the gut feel, but you need to create the room to explore that. And I think that most founders don't find that place of stillness. They're going in, go, go, go the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Next comment also from Nadia. For me, I see how things can fall into place into the future to solve problem in a creative way. I see possibilities in areas others do not, combining creativity and tech. And just that comment alone tells me, and I know you are friends. Nadia and Tracy, you have worked together before, you are friends, and it's so amazing to see how you are so like-minded. Integrity and
And
openness are
sorry,
important.
can I just pick up on that with that
Please
point that
do.
Nadia mentioned of playfulness? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's an essential way of accessing your zone of genius. I think so much we feel we need to do things by the book. And my view is, I had a client the other day say to me, "Oh, Tracy, I feel like I need to get up early in the morning and I need to meditate and I need to do this and I need to do that. But I come alive in the evening." I'm like, be playful, be creative. And if you find that there it's taking pen to paper and writing, or it's drawing, do that. And creativity is so underestimated. And it's something I play with a lot. So absolutely, Nadia, I'd encourage everyone, be playful, be creative. That's going to help you deepen that zone of genius.
There you go. And then Diana is commenting that it's all about learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's really it. I think that's the point that you made before when you were talking about the identity and not holding on to old identities that we carry around with us, but being able to actually break it down and build it up again in a new way. Nadia, storytelling is,
Sorry,
yeah.
Claudia, if I can just on the learn, unlearn, I think that's absolutely critical. And what I'd say is sometimes people don't know what the unlearn bit is. And that's where you can need support, because it sounds easy, learn, unlearn. But what I found is that people often say, "Oh, I'm reading books and I can unlearn that way." But it often takes, as Nathan, you probably find, people to have someone by their side to really help them identify what are those critical pieces that they do need to unlearn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then Sammy is making a comment here that the case study indicates sometimes societal expectations, in this case, people perceiving her as bragging, going back to Nathan's encounter yesterday, limits us from optimizing our potential. There is need to see how to best leverage and or optimize our strength, even as we improve in our weak areas. That's pretty
And I
much
think
hitting
that's
the nail on its head, right?
beautiful. And I think we need to take the fear of judgment of what people are going to think out of our mind. And I loved what Sammy just said there about improve our weak areas. I believe that we often discard a whole area because we think they're weakness. But I
Mm-hmm.
like to look at weaknesses potentially as areas that we've either had beliefs about that we couldn't do, or that they could be areas that we've never really explored. So it's like going to a gym, we've not flexed that muscle. So therefore, it's never going to be a strength. But now, when we're intentional about it, we can grow any part of us. And I think
Mm-hmm.
people will be surprised by perceived weaknesses that might well be in that zone of genius.
All right, all right. And so Nadia has another question, and I love this question so much because I'm all about cultural differences, diversity, and so on. Nadia's question is, what's the impact of cultural upbringing on tapping into the zone of genius, and how do you balance authenticity versus expectations in different cultures? Wonderful question.
Wonderful question. And I think that needs a real exploration with each of the person to really see what are the expectations that they feel are so imposed upon them, and then really exploring, whether they are limitations or not. So I think there's a lot of, it's quite difficult to generalize an answer there, but I would say it needs a lot of investigation. And I would say that the key is ultimately to find that authenticity. And if there are values or cultural elements that are important, it's exploring from a place of authenticity how you can align, but it needs to come from your inner core.
Wow, wow, Tracy, we could go on here, I think, for hours with each other because we are just bouncing this off together with our audience here. Thank you all so much for your questions and your comments. Unfortunately, we only have 2 more minutes on the clock, so
Can I leave you with one question that sometimes we might have just chance? People often ask me what the difference between peak performance and zone of genius is. And
one
I like
minute.
that people like to think that there is a peak. But when you expand your zone of genius, that peak stops being a peak, a moment in time. We can then make it be a new floor because we're expanding and we're getting better. Our identity is improving, our skills are improving. So that is the magic of the zone of genius. It's not about peaks, it's about an ever growing series of scales there where we're really expanding. So
Oh,
I hope.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love Dan's last comment here. Dan lets us know that he's already closer to his own zone of genius. And that
Good.
tells me we did something right here in this episode today. Again, Tracy, thank you so much for joining us
Pleasure.
here, for taking the opportunity to share your message with our audience and taking time out of your extremely busy schedule. If you want to get in touch with Tracy, you can find her at tracyclark.london, and she's also very active on LinkedIn. And before we had the show, you actually wanted to share an offer with our audience, Tracy.
Yeah. I know that zone of genius is something that I found really impactful and it often really resonates with people. So if this has resonated and you're curious as to what your zone of genius is and you've watched this, do get in touch and just mention Pitch Zone. And I'd be delighted to have an exploration with you and help you get on your journey of discovery and awakening.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for this generous offer, Tracy. If you are seeing this, whether you joined us live or whether you are watching the replay, take Tracy up on this offer. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. It is amazing how Tracy can distill your uniqueness in a way that helps you to enter your zone of genius. And with that, I thank everybody who joined us live here today. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Nathan. And I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we shall see each other again next week.